Welcome to 15 Minutes with Longevity. I'm Giselle Wertheim-Ames and I'll be your host. Today we'll be speaking about diabetes. We're unpacking the statistics, the risks, and what can be done about it. First we spoke to Dr Razana Allie. She is from Diabetes South Africa and she explains to us what diabetes is and its symptoms, what to look out for. So let's go and take a look. I thought perhaps we could just start off at that point of understanding what is diabetes, particularly also the differences between a type 1 diabetes and a type 2 diabetes and how it actually manifests itself.
Diabetes is a chronic condition which is mostly because of high blood glucose levels, and it's related to the amount of insulin that you do have and whether your body is absorbing the insulin or not. Unfortunately, with high blood sugar levels, we do see a rise in complications to the eyes, where people can develop blindness or have a stroke or have a heart attack, kidney failure. There's also circulatory problems, so the amputations are also more common with diabetes, and that's why it's very important to get good control and good blood sugar levels. Type 2 diabetes, the trigger is the lifestyle, the abnormal lifestyle, so not eating correctly, not exercising. The stress levels are quite high these days as well, so when we are stressed we want to sit on the couch and just mope for a little while, and sometimes that obviously is causing the the higher blood sugar levels, the extra weight.
And who is most at risk in South Africa of becoming diabetic?
At the moment, across the board, we see that it is generally more prevalent in your Asian population. It's a genetic gene that is in sort of prevalence there, that has the major prevalence there. But we're seeing that more of our black population is getting it now, because we're coming out of the rural areas and we're coming into urban areas where life is very different. There's just not a lot of walking anymore, not collecting the water, not growing the garden,
not being active,
and we're doing a lot more takeaways. So our lifestyle have changed, definitely.
How would you know that you have diabetes? How would you know? I mean, how do you find out is perhaps the right way? What would become apparent to you as a person that you are actually inflicted with this disease?
First of all, in the back of your mind, you have to think about your risk factors. So if you know that you have a family history of diabetes, your risk is already there. If you know that you automatically have high blood pressure, you have high cholesterol, those two are also risk factors to the probable diagnosis of diabetes. We also see the extra weight, so especially around the girth. So with women, where they're more than 82 centimeters, men more than 94 centimeters of a waist, then there's a risk factor as well. And also your symptoms. So your symptoms would possibly be dry mouth, drinking lots of water, then running to the toilet a lot, staying up at night, going to toilet very often, and then being very tired during the day, sort of falling asleep early morning, late afternoon. There's also sudden weight loss without actually trying. You're getting weight loss over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. You can actually lose a lot of weight, and that will be your symptoms as well. Sometimes there's also infections, recurrent infections that just don't heal, and we see that a lot with the type 1 patients, because their parents are more aware of what is going on, and they can't tell you that they have a dry mouth. They're drinking a lot more. You see them going to the loo a lot. With children, they also tend to get abdominal pain, so they get pains in the stomach. They tend to have nausea and vomiting as well, and those are typical symptoms of type 1 diabetes.
So a patient now has diabetes. How would this impact on their day-to-day life? How would they have to fit this disease into their lifestyle planning?
Well, to get up, and usually we would like them to test their blood sugar levels. We would then expect them to have breakfast, because breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So eating is still important. To have the correct breakfast, obviously prior to that having seen a dietitian, so that you can get the right kind of meals that's important to your lifestyle. And then they then take their medication, so it depends on whether they're injecting or whether they're just taking tablets. Your type 1 diabetes, they're always injecting insulin from day one, so they'll be injecting as part of their condition. But with type 2 diabetes, we see that because it's a progressive condition where your pancreas continuously fails and then stops producing insulin, we see that eventually people go onto insulin. So they start off with tablets and then eventually go onto insulin.
We all appreciate this is a very serious disease for South Africans, and a growing disease, and there is no cure for it, certainly not in medical science at the moment. So we're going to have to all live with it. But from your perspective, how do you deal with that? How do you see that in the context of diabetes today?
But there's management.
Okay. So there's the hope.
Yeah, absolutely. And the management comes from the understanding and from using your medication and from testing. I always say that your testing is the window into your world, because for as much as you test your blood sugars before and after your meals, you can understand how your body is absorbing those sugars and what is playing a role.
And now we look to Dr Geert Verhelst, a physician from Belgium visiting South Africa, about his opinion on the health crisis of diabetes in South Africa.
Recent reports suggested that South Africa is under a national health crisis with the increase of diabetes. We spoke to Dr Geert Verhelst, a physician specializing in holistic and natural treatment of the disease, about this report.
I've heard or I read the reports as well. And it's true that South Africa is in a dramatic situation, but it's not the only country. In fact, it's every country with a Western lifestyle. And it's true it's a dramatic situation, because if younger people now, 30% of the younger people are overweight or obese, for now they may still be quite healthy without any health problems, but overweight and obesity really increase the risk of developing diseases like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, osteoarthritis, liver and gallbladder problems. So we're looking at a future that is not that bright, because a lot of heavy or children and adolescents with overweight will cope with serious health problems within 20 or 30 years. And this will have enormous consequences on an economic level, on a health level.
Dr. Verhelst emphasized how the foods of today compared to that of the past have impacted greatly on the poor health conditions we face today.
There is definitely an association with the food we eat. I think the three cornerstones of bad health nowadays is a bad diet, not having enough physical activity, and overweight or obesity, and consequence of those two factors. So unhealthy diet is surely one of the main reasons of these health conditions. Now, if we look at the foods we're eating today, a lot of those food contain a lot of sugar, or highly refined and have lost their fiber, or are processed in a very highly processed. So if you look at the food we ate, for instance, like 100 years ago, we ate fresh, unrefined, healthy food like fresh vegetables, fresh fruit, fresh nuts, lean meat, poultry. Now, instead of fresh fruit and whole cereal, we eat refined cereals like white rice, white pasta, biscuits, all kinds of bakery goods. If we look at the meat we eat, a lot of it is processed meat, bologna, sausage, ham, bacon, and so on. So we come from a food that was hardly processed, that contained a lot of nutrients, and we evolved to foodstuff that is highly refined, contains a lot of refined sugar and processed fats that contain the bad trans fatty acids. So there is definitely a relation with our food.
We asked Dr. Verhelst what measures he feels should be taken to help the public understand the severity of this disease.
In fact, the government could do two things on this level. Start national education programs. I'm only suggesting it. I'm not a governor, I'm not a president. But educate the people why obesity and overweight is so bad for the health, and tell the people what the better food choices are and why those unhealthy foods are bad for us. But then again, there is a very strange situation. Even if you can convince the people that they have to choose fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, unrefined healthy food, the refined processed food is much cheaper nowadays per calorie than the good unrefined natural food. So in my opinion, there's also something to do on a governmental level. For instance, a slight suggestion, taxing all the food industry that produces anything with sugar, sugar-containing bakery goods, refined cereals, processed meats.
But has this method been successful and made a difference in other countries?
It has been suggested, but it has not been done yet. Instead, still, they put the accents, the food industry would not like this, that's for sure. So instead they're talking about a tax on saturated fats. But again, saturated fats are not our main enemy. Saturated fats from a good quality we need. We also need the unsaturated fats. There's a balance between them. But for instance, in the country I come from, in Belgium, they thought, oh, we should tax the food that contains saturated fats. I do not agree. We should tax the food that contains sugar and refined cereals and processed fats. That's a big difference, I think.
A popular but non-medicinal recommendation Dr. Verhelst makes to his patients is to use cinnamon to prevent as well as maintain type 2 diabetes.
What is considered cinnamon, I like to use that in the prevention of type 2 diabetes or in type 2 diabetes. But if you buy regular cinnamon powder, you're never sure what quality it is. Does it contain the real cinnamon and not the Chinese cinnamon, which is related to it, but has less active principles? So what I prefer is to use a water-based cinnamon extract, of which is proven in studies that it helps to lower the glucose level.
That's all the time we have. Thank you for joining us at home, and tune in again next week for your dose of health news. Goodbye.